The city woke up cold. New York wind didn't whisper, it bit. It howled down narrow streets, curling through alleyways and slicing through layers of wool and resolve. For Dr. Andre James, it was just another test. Another gray, bitter morning he had to outrun. His alarm had blared at 4:30 a.m., just like every other day. He'd barely gotten 3 hours of sleep, but that was standard for an intern at Lenox Memorial Hospital. No time for breakfast, no time for regrets. Just scrub in, show up, and survive. Today wasn't just any shift, it was the day. The mandatory intern evaluation with Dr. Wallace Strickland, chief of medicine. Missing it could end a career before it began. Andre had rehearsed his answers in the mirror for days, practiced his polite nod, controlled every muscle in his face to appear just grateful enough, but not weak, not soft. He walked fast through Midtown, his coat collar flipped against the wind, eyes focused straight ahead. But fate has a way of disrupting even the most carefully planned path. At the corner of 48th and Lexington, a crumpled figure lay motionless near a construction site. People stepped around it like litter, avoiding eye contact, walking faster. Some glanced, then dismissed. Andre hesitated. He knew what he should do. He also knew what it would cost. The man was old. Worn shoes, patched coat, skin weathered by life. He was barely breathing. "Sir." Andre knelt beside him, ignoring the cold that seeped through his gloves. "Can you hear me?" No response. Just a faint wheeze. Andre's heart pounded. His meeting was in 10 minutes, 8 blocks away. "If you miss this, it's over," a voice in his head warned. But another voice, quieter, stronger, spoke louder. "If this were your father, what would you want someone to do?" He tapped his smartwatch and called 911, giving precise vitals to the dispatcher. When the ambulance arrived, Andre rode with the man, his mind racing the whole way. As the doors of the ER opened and swallowed them both, Andre knew one thing with painful certainty. He had just thrown away his future for a stranger. The ER buzzed with the usual chaos, beeping monitors, shouting nurses, the steady hum of too many lives teetering between diagnosis and disaster. Andre stayed beside the old man, watching as a team of nurses and residents worked quickly. The man was hypothermic, blood pressure low, pulse ready. No ID, no next of kin, nothing but a beat-up coat and a faded notebook clutched in one hand. His lips moved faintly, but no words came. Andre leaned in. "Sir? What's your name?" A whisper. Barely a breath. "Lee." "Okay, Mr. Lee. You're safe. Just hang in there." Once he was stable and admitted, Andre stepped out of the room, the weight of time crashing back on his shoulders. He checked his watch, 10:17 a.m. The meeting. He sprinted through the halls, barely dodging stretchers and carts, pulling off his gloves, smoothing his hair. He tried to compose himself, but he was already too late. The door to the conference room was closed. Inside, through the glass, he saw Dr. Wallace Strickland standing at the head of the table, flanked by a panel of senior physicians. Everyone else was seated, except the empty chair marked Dr. James A. He opened the door slowly. Strickland didn't even look up. "You're 37 minutes late." Andre began, breathless. "There was a man on the street. Collapsed. I stayed with him. He could have died." Strickland looked up now, eyes sharp and cold. "You stayed with a stranger and skipped your professional evaluation." Andre tried to stand his ground. "I did what any decent doctor would. Wrong." Strickland's voice sliced through the air. "You did what a rookie would. This hospital doesn't run on good intentions, Dr. James. It runs on discipline, precision, and obedience." The panel was silent. "You want to play the hero? Join the Red Cross. But here, you follow orders, or you find another place to work." Andre felt heat rise in his chest, a quiet fire. But he said nothing. He just nodded, jaw clenched, pride burning. Strickland dismissed him with a flick of the hand. "Go. We'll review your status later, if there's anything left to review." Andre walked out of the room feeling like his chest had cracked open. He had done the right thing. And somehow, it had nearly cost him everything. Andre didn't go back to his shift right away. He found a quiet corner in the stairwell, cold, concrete, and empty, and sat on the third step from the top. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of what had just happened. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya, a fellow intern and one of the few people at the hospital who still treated him like a human being. "Heard what happened. Are you okay?" He stared at the screen, fingers frozen above the keyboard. Then finally typed. "Not really. Might have just torched my future." He hit send, but the ache stayed. The whole reason he fought to get into medicine, the sacrifice, the debt, the endless sleepless nights, was to matter. to do good. And yet, in this place, goodness was weakness. Compassion was punished. As he walked back into the main hall, the shift change crowd was already swirling through, residents buzzing with updates, nurses moving fast, interns whispering with wide eyes. He heard his name. Yeah, that's him. Missed the Strickland eval. They said he stopped for some guy in the street. What was he thinking? Andre kept walking. In the break room, Maya waited with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one without a word. I heard Strickland lit you up, she finally said. Like a Christmas tree, Andre muttered, taking a sip. Some of them are saying you're done. Andre gave a tight smile. Wouldn't surprise me. Maya leaned against the counter. You know, most people here wouldn't have stopped. I mean, I don't know if I would have. You would have, Andre said quietly. If you'd seen him. He looked like someone's grandfather. Like a person who mattered. There was a pause. Then Maya said, so what happened to him? They admitted him as a John Doe, Andre said. Stable, but out cold. No ID. No records. Just a notebook. Maya's brow lifted. Weird. What kind of notebook? Didn't get a good look. Looked old. Worn. Like it had been through a war. They stood in silence a moment longer. Then a call came over the loudspeaker. Trauma incoming. Back to work. Andre took one more sip of the coffee, then tossed it and grabbed his white coat. Let's go save some lives before I lose my job. Maya gave him a sad smile. You already are saving lives, Andre. They just can't see it yet. As they walked back into the storm of the hospital floor, neither of them noticed the nurse entering Mr. Lee's room with new orders. Orders signed under a private file no one could access. And the old man? He was still unconscious. But soon, everything would change. 3 days passed. Andre checked on the old man every chance he got. His chart listed him as Lee, unknown, still unconscious, no family contact, no personal items except the small notebook locked in the attending physician's desk for safekeeping. There was something about the man that lingered in Andre's mind. The quiet strength in his face. The way his hand clutched that notebook like it held his last breath. Andre couldn't explain it, just a feeling, like he wasn't just another street case. Like there was more. Each time Andre visited the room, he expected him to wake up. Say something. Open his eyes. But each time, it was the same machines humming, steady vitals, silent stillness. Then, on the 4th morning, the bed was empty. Andre stopped short in the doorway. No patient. No chart. No machines. Just the sterile smell of bleach and freshly folded sheets. As if he'd never been there. Andre flagged down a nurse. What happened to the patient in 3B? The elderly man? John Doe? She checked her tablet. Discharged. Early this morning. That's impossible, Andre said. He was still unconscious last night. The nurse frowned. I'm just reading what's here. Says he was transferred to private care. No forwarding info. Andre's heart kicked. Who authorized it? She shrugged. Strickland, I think. Or someone above my pay grade. VIP protocol happens sometimes. Quiet exits. Andre felt a chill deeper than the morning air. Something didn't sit right. Later, he confronted Dr. Strickland in the hallway. The patient I brought in, Mr. Lee. Where is he? Strickland gave him a dry glance. Why does it matter? He was unconscious. He wasn't ready to be discharged. Strickland stopped walking, turned. Listen to me, Dr. James. You've already overstepped once. Don't do it again. This isn't your business anymore. Understand? Andre's jaw tightened. Yes, sir, he said through gritted teeth. Strickland walked off, coat flapping behind him like a curtain closing on a scene. But Andre stood still, questions buzzing in his brain. Something wasn't adding up. Later that night, he returned to the room, sat in the chair where the old man once lay, stared at the ceiling, thinking, what kind of man disappears in the middle of the night? Who pulls strings powerful enough to bypass hospital protocol? Why all the secrecy? And more importantly, why did Andre feel like this was just the beginning of something much bigger? 1 week passed. The hospital marched on like it always did, blood drawn, charts updated, lives saved and lost in the span of a single shift. Andre moved through the motions, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he walked past room 3B, a ghost passed through him. That room used to hold something important. Someone important. And now, nothing. The whispers hadn't stopped, either. He'd become the intern who chose a street stranger over his future. Some called it noble. Others called it stupid. Strickland still hadn't said a word about Andre's status since the evaluation, but the silence was loud. Then came the envelope. It arrived at the hospital's front desk addressed in handwriting, not typed. Dr. Andre James. Confidential. No return address. The receptionist handed it to him with a raised brow. Secret admirer? Andre managed a half-smile and walked to the nearest empty lounge. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of fine stationery. At the top, Mr. Leonard Lee, Private Estate, Hudson Valley. Beneath that, just 2 lines. Some debts can never be repaid, but they can be honored. You're invited. Saturday, noon sharp. A location was scribbled on the back. No phone number. No instructions. Andre stared at the name. Leonard Lee. The name sparked something. Familiar, but distant. Then, like lightning through fog, it hit him. Leonard Lee wasn't just any man. He was the founder of Neuralis, a revolutionary AI-based healthcare company. A former tech titan. A man who had vanished from public life nearly 5 years ago after a private scandal and a battle with cancer. The media had speculated he was dead, in exile, or hiding from lawsuits. But no one knew for sure. And now, Andre realized with a jolt. He was the man on the street. The old man he'd saved. Andre read the letter again, hands trembling slightly. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Whatever was waiting in Hudson Valley, it was going to change everything. Saturday morning came with the usual rush, a blur of medical rounds, the hum of beepers, and the usual chaos of the ER. But Andre couldn't shake the envelope, tucked safely in the pocket of his white coat. It felt like a secret too heavy to carry. He hadn't told anyone about it, not Maya, not anyone. There was no explaining it. This wasn't just some random invitation. This was Leonard Lee. He couldn't focus. It was as if his mind had already left, speeding toward Hudson Valley, toward the unknown. By noon, Andre was behind the wheel of his old sedan, navigating the winding highways that led out of the city. His heart raced in his chest, not from the drive, but from the uncertainty of what awaited him. A private estate. A tech mogul. A life-altering invitation. The landscape outside changed as the city melted away, skyscrapers giving way to lush forests, rolling hills, and the occasional mansion standing isolated against a backdrop of greenery. It was peaceful, almost eerie, the silence in stark contrast to the noise of New York. The address from the back of the letter took him further out, deeper into the hills where the trees seemed to crowd closer together. When he finally arrived, he saw it. The estate was massive, more than a house, it was a compound. Modern but elegant, its glass walls reflected the light, giving it the illusion of being both of this world and outside of it. The driveway was long, flanked by tall, manicured trees, leading up to a grand entrance. A security gate at the bottom of the drive buzzed as it slid open with just a wave of Andre's hand. He parked in front of the large, sweeping staircase that led up to the front door. The atmosphere was too serene, too perfect. For a moment, Andre wondered if he was walking into a trap. But there was no turning back. As he stepped out of the car, a tall butler-like figure in a black suit appeared at the door. He didn't speak, but merely gestured for Andre to follow him inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, Andre felt the weight of everything he had worked for: the years of medical school, the sleepless nights, the calls from his mom, the sacrifices. All of it seemed so small. As if the world inside these walls was an entirely different universe. The butler led him to a spacious, open room. At the center was an enormous, polished table made from dark wood, and in front of it sat a man who looked too familiar, and yet unfamiliar. Leonard Lee, the man who had been unconscious in the ER just days ago. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his face, though older, was still sharp, his eyes piercing. He looked nothing like the fragile, frail figure Andre had seen in the hospital. Here, he was regal, almost otherworldly. Dr. James, Leonard's voice was deep and measured. I'm glad you came. Andre stood frozen for a moment, then cleared his throat. Mr. Lee? Or, are you Leonard Lee? Leonard smiled softly. The same man. The one you saved. I don't understand, Andre stammered. You were dead? Hiding? Ill? I suppose the rumors do paint a colorful picture. Leonard's eyes glinted with amusement, but there was something heavier beneath. But no, I've been observing. Andre's confusion only deepened. Observing. He took a step forward, trying to make sense of it all. Why? Why me? Because I'm looking for someone who understands what it means to serve others. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine compassion. Leonard leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Andre's. Someone who believes in people, not just systems. Andre's mind raced, but he held steady. I didn't know who you were when I helped you. Does it matter? Leonard asked, voice low and direct. You didn't stop to ask. You just acted. Andre swallowed hard, heart thudding in his chest. Why? Leonard's gaze softened. Because you're exactly the kind of man I've been searching for, and the kind of man I want to help build something greater. He paused, letting the silence fill the space between them. Then he added, Dr. James, I want to offer you the opportunity of a lifetime. Andre's pulse quickened. What are you talking about? Leonard leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping on the table in front of him. I've spent my life building something that could change the face of healthcare forever. But it can't be done from a boardroom or a tech startup in Silicon Valley. It needs someone like you. Someone who still believes in the human element of medicine. Andre felt his breath catch. You want me to lead something? Leonard smiled, but there was no hint of amusement in his eyes. No, Dr. James. I want you to build it. A new clinic. A new model of care. One that puts people first, not profits. A moment passed between them. Heavy, pregnant with possibility. Leonard's eyes never left Andre's. I'll provide everything. Funding. Resources. Support. All you have to do is make it happen. Andre felt the world tilt under him. This was no longer about medical school or internships or climbing the career ladder. This was about something bigger than himself. Something that could change everything. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the mansion's central air system. Leonard's words hung in the air, vibrating with a weight that Andre could hardly comprehend. A new clinic. A new model of care. A chance to build something from the ground up. A dream that most doctors only whispered about in the dark corners of their minds. But it wasn't that simple. Andre had spent his whole life working toward one goal, becoming a doctor, saving lives, making a difference. He'd fought for every inch, every moment of his career. And now, here was this offer, this impossible opportunity, sitting before him like an open door to a different life. But what would it cost? Why me? Andre finally asked, his voice quieter than he intended. Why trust me with this? There are thousands of doctors out there. Doctors with experience, connections. Experience is important, Leonard interrupted, his voice calm and firm. But what I need is someone who hasn't been corrupted by the system. Someone who hasn't learned to play the game. I need someone who still sees patients as people, not cases. You've shown me that. You are that person. Andre shook his head slowly, unable to absorb the enormity of it all. I'm just an intern, Mr. Lee. I don't have the experience to build something like that. I don't even know where to start. Leonard leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly, studying Andre's every movement. That's why I'm here. To help you. To provide everything you'll need. I have the resources, the influence, the backing to make this work. But I need someone with the heart. Someone like you. Andre stepped back, running a hand through his hair. His mind raced as visions of the hospital, the staff, the endless pressure and bureaucracy that came with being just another cog in the system flickered in his mind. He could see it so clearly, how he'd been pushed, pulled, molded into a shape that the system would accept. But something had always felt wrong, like he was losing the reason he started in the first place. He turned to Leonard, his resolve hardening. What do you want me to do? Leonard's lips curled into a small smile. I want you to build a clinic where people are treated like people, where we focus on health, not profit, where compassion, not efficiency, is the measure of success. And what's in it for you? Andre asked, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Leonard's smile widened, though it remained gentle. You think I'm doing this out of charity? He chuckled softly. No, Dr. James. I'm investing in something bigger than just healthcare. This clinic will be a beacon, a model. If we succeed here, we'll change the way medicine is practiced everywhere. This isn't about money. It's about legacy. A new way forward. Andre's mind raced as the weight of the decision pressed down on him. It wasn't just about leaving behind his current life at the hospital. This was about the kind of doctor he wanted to become, the kind of care he wanted to provide. And yet, what happens if it fails? Andre asked, his voice betraying a vulnerability he hadn't intended. Leonard's expression softened. Failure isn't the end, Andre. It's part of the process. But you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. And if it fails, we'll try something else. Andre took a deep breath, his mind flooding with questions. But there was one thing he knew for certain. This was the moment that could define the rest of his life. He looked Leonard in the eye. You're asking me to take a leap of faith. Leonard nodded slowly. I am. Andre's heart pounded in his chest as he stood there, the path ahead stretching out before him like an open road. The fear was still there, the fear of failing, of losing everything he'd worked for. But alongside it was something else, something brighter. Hope. A chance to make a real difference. "I'm in," Andre said, his voice steady. "Let's build this thing." Leonard's eyes lit up with approval, and for the first time, Andre saw the true depth of the man before him. This wasn't just a tech billionaire or an eccentric philanthropist. Leonard Lee was a visionary. And now, Andre was part of that vision. Leonard stood and extended his hand. "Then let's get started." The following weeks were a blur. Andre had expected a gradual transition, a slow build-up toward the clinic's creation. Instead, Leonard pushed him into the deep end from the very beginning. No time for doubt, no time for second-guessing. Every day was a flurry of meetings, phone calls, and new plans. The first major hurdle was the location. Leonard's private estate wasn't the place for the clinic, so Andre began scouring areas of the city that would be both accessible and fitting for the mission. Leonard insisted the clinic should feel different, something more inviting than the cold, sterile halls of a hospital. The vision for the clinic, Leonard explained, wasn't just about providing top-tier care. It was about creating a space where patients were seen as people, where they could feel heard, respected, and cared for in a way that the traditional medical system often failed to do. Leonard had hired top-tier architects, designers, and engineers to create a space that reflected these ideals. But for Andre, the real challenge was figuring out how to make it a place where doctors and patients could connect, not just in theory, but in practice. He began to draw up plans, starting with the staff. How would he build a team of professionals who shared his vision? The hospital system had become a revolving door of exhausted doctors and overwhelmed nurses, each working within the confines of a broken system. Andre needed people who weren't just looking to make money, but who were driven by the same passion for healing that he felt. He reached out to former colleagues, people he trusted. Maya was the first to agree. She hadn't hesitated for a second when Andre called her and explained the project. "This is insane," she said over the phone. "But it's exactly what the system needs. I'm in." The next challenge was funding. Leonard's wealth was endless, but Andre quickly learned that money alone wouldn't make this dream a reality. They needed to demonstrate that a clinic focused on patient care, not profit, could succeed in a world that was obsessed with efficiency and bottom lines. They started small, working on outreach programs, conducting community surveys, and partnering with local health organizations to get a sense of the needs within the population. It was about creating trust, building relationships from the ground up. One evening, while Andre was poring over reports at his desk, Leonard entered the room. He stood quietly for a moment, watching Andre. "I've been thinking," Leonard said, breaking the silence. Andre glanced up, surprised at the sudden intrusion. "About what?" "The clinic's mission." Leonard's gaze was steady. "We've been talking a lot about patient care, but we need to be clear about our impact. Not just on the patients, but on the community. If we do this right, we'll set a new standard for the industry." Andre nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of the words. He had always thought in terms of immediate care, how to treat the patient in front of him. But Leonard was right. This was bigger than just the clinic. It was about reshaping an entire industry. A movement, not just a medical facility. Let's make sure we're not just providing care, but building a better system, one that others will want to follow. Andre thought about it for a moment, then stood up and walked to the large whiteboard in the corner of the room. He picked up a marker and began writing. "Education," he said aloud, as if it had come to him in that very instant. "We have to educate the community, not just about health, but about their rights, about access, about what's possible if we think differently." Leonard smiled. "Exactly. We'll train doctors, yes, but we'll also empower the people we serve. Health is more than just treatment. It's about knowledge. It's about dignity." As the days passed, Andre began to see the vision come to life. Plans for the clinic's design took shape. Staff recruitment began in earnest. And the most exciting part? They were already receiving interest from medical professionals who shared their mission: doctors, nurses, therapists, specialists who were eager to leave behind the corporate grind and become part of something that actually put people first. But the real breakthrough came when they started hiring administrators, people who would run the business side of the clinic. They needed people who understood how to balance the books while staying true to the mission. That's when Andre thought of Reynolds, the former police officer turned private investigator who had worked with him on a few personal cases in the past. Reynolds was level-headed, smart, and organized in a way Andre couldn't even dream of being. He was a natural fit for the role. When Andre called Reynolds, there was no hesitation. "Sounds like a damn good challenge," Reynolds said, his gravelly voice full of amusement. "I'm in." The pieces were falling into place, but Andre still had one nagging concern that wouldn't leave him alone. What would the rest of the medical community think? Would they support this radical new approach, or would they see it as a threat to everything they'd worked for? The truth was, Andre didn't know, but there was something inside him that told him it didn't matter. The clinic was happening. It was going to work, and it was going to change everything. The day had arrived. The clinic, now named Hope Care, stood proudly on the corner of 9th Avenue, a gleaming modern structure with sleek glass panels that reflected the light of the setting sun. It looked like nothing else in the city. It wasn't just a medical facility, it was a beacon, a promise. Andre stood outside the main entrance, hands in his pockets, watching the crowd begin to gather. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was only an hour away, but the energy in the air already felt electric. It was more than just the excitement of opening a new business. It was the birth of an idea that, just a few months ago, had seemed impossible. Inside, Leonard was greeting the first of many influential guests, local dignitaries, health advocates, and members of the press who were eager to get the first look at the new model of healthcare that had the potential to shake the very foundations of the industry. Andre took a deep breath. He had to admit, he wasn't entirely ready for the wave of attention that had come with opening day. It was one thing to help create the vision. It was another thing entirely to step out in front of the world and claim it as his own. But he couldn't let the nerves get to him. He couldn't let fear stand in the way of everything he'd worked for. A car pulled up, and Maya stepped out, her face lighting up when she saw Andre. She hurried over to him, her bright eyes filled with pride. "We did it," she said, squeezing his arm. "Look at this place." Andre smiled, though his mind was elsewhere. "Yeah, but it's just the beginning. You've done more than most people ever will," she said, her tone warm and genuine. "Look at what you've created. Look at the lives you'll change." Before he could respond, Reynolds appeared at his side, holding a clipboard. "Everything's on track. We're ready to go." Andre nodded, taking another steadying breath. He had dreamed of this day for so long, but the reality was overwhelming. This wasn't just a clinic. It was a revolution, and he was leading it. Leonard appeared at his side, wearing a tailored suit that looked as sharp as ever. His face was composed, but Andre could see the gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. "How does it feel?" Leonard asked, his voice low but filled with meaning. "I've never felt anything like it," Andre replied honestly. "This is your moment," Leonard said. "But don't forget, you're not alone in this. We're just getting started." The next few hours were a whirlwind. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a huge success, with photographers snapping pictures and reporters scribbling notes. Leonard spoke briefly about the vision behind Hope Care, the mission to create a new kind of healthcare that prioritized people over profits. He spoke about the importance of education, compassion, and community. But Andre barely heard a word. His mind was focused on something else, the real work that lay ahead. By the time the doors opened to the public, the crowd had grown larger. People lined up to get a tour of the facility, to ask questions, to see what the future of healthcare could look like. Andre was amazed by the diversity of the crowd. There were families, young professionals, seniors, and even those who had never had access to healthcare before. The dream was becoming a reality. Maya and Reynolds moved about, greeting patients, answering questions, and making sure everything ran smoothly. Andre stood near the reception desk, his eyes scanning the room. He couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride, but also a deep sense of responsibility. This was it. The clinic was open, and now it was time to prove that it could work. By the end of the day, the lines had thinned, and the clinic's lobby was quieter. But the weight of the moment still lingered in the air. Leonard found Andre again, standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline as the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon. "You did good," Leonard said, his voice calm but full of praise. "We did good," Andre corrected him, turning to meet Leonard's gaze. Leonard smiled. "True. But you're the one who made it happen." Andre shook his head, overwhelmed by the enormity of the day. "It's just the beginning. There's still so much to do." "That's the spirit," Leonard said, clapping him on the back. "We've made a dent. And from here on out, it's about staying true to our mission, one patient at a time." Andre nodded. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him, but it wasn't a burden. It was a call to action. He could feel it deep in his bones. The fire that had driven him to this point wasn't going out. It was only growing stronger. Hope Care wasn't just a clinic. It was a movement, and Andre was ready to lead it, to change the way people saw healthcare. He was ready to prove that, with the right heart and the right people, a new model could work, that it could save lives. And maybe, just maybe, it could save the very soul of the medical system itself. The weeks after the grand opening were a whirlwind of activity. Hope Care was everything Andre had dreamed of and more. The clinic's philosophy was catching on. Patients returned, grateful for the compassionate care they received. Word of mouth spread quickly, and soon, the clinic was not only serving local families but attracting individuals from surrounding areas, many of whom had never had access to quality health care before. But as the clinic's popularity grew, so did the challenges. Andre had thought the hardest part would be getting the doors open. He was wrong. It was only after the doors had opened that Andre began to realize the true scope of what they were trying to build. There were days when the clinic was overwhelmed, staff were running ragged, and resources were stretched thin. He had to make tough decisions on the fly, balancing patient care with operational constraints. No matter how much he wanted to help everyone, there were limits to what they could do in a day, a week, a month. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Andre stood in the lobby of the clinic, staring at the sign above the reception desk. It felt like a lifetime ago that this space had been nothing more than a dream. Now, it was filled with real people, real problems. People who had come to rely on Hope Care for not just medical treatment, but for hope. But hope wasn't enough. Not always. Andre was pulled from his thoughts by a familiar voice. Long day? Maya asked, stepping beside him. She had stayed late, sorting through patient files. You could say that, Andre replied, rubbing his eyes. I'm just wondering how long we can keep up this pace. Maya glanced around at the bustling clinic. You're doing great, Andre. Look at this place. People are getting the care they deserve, and that's all because of you. Andre didn't feel like it was enough. The weight of the responsibility had been eating at him. With every patient he saw, with every decision he made, he wondered, was it really working? Was he truly making the difference he'd promised? The phone in his pocket buzzed, snapping him back to reality. It was a text from Reynolds. We need to talk. Something's come up. You should come to the office. Andre's heart sank. The last time Reynolds had texted him like this, it had been about an issue with the clinic's finances. He tried not to overthink it but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I'll be back in a few, he said to Maya, before heading toward the back office. When he arrived, Reynolds was standing at the desk, arms crossed, looking troubled. There was a pile of paperwork in front of him, reports, invoices, and contracts. Andre's stomach dropped. Something didn't feel right. What's going on? Andre asked, closing the door behind him. Reynolds didn't immediately respond. Instead, he pushed a folder across the desk. I've been going through our books. Some of the accounts don't add up. And we've got a few discrepancies with our insurance providers. Andre took a seat, his mind racing. Discrepancies? What kind of discrepancies? I don't know yet, Reynolds said, shaking his head. But it looks like someone's been tampering with the clinic's financial records. These aren't mistakes. They're intentional. Andre felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. What do you mean, tampering? I mean, there are funds missing. Accounts that shouldn't be there, invoices that don't match up. Someone's been siphoning money from the clinic. Andre's heart began to pound. Is it one of our staff members? Reynolds exhaled slowly. It's hard to say right now, but we need to act fast. If this keeps going, it could destroy everything we've built. Andre rubbed his temples, trying to process the news. This wasn't just a financial issue. It was a betrayal. A breach of trust that could ruin the clinic, ruin everything he'd worked for. We'll find out who's behind this, Andre said, his voice steady despite the anger boiling inside him. We'll get to the bottom of it. Reynolds nodded. I'll start digging through the records, see if I can track the source. Andre stood, feeling a fire ignite within him. He had been through too much to let someone destroy the dream they were building. He wouldn't let it happen. Not now. Not when they were so close to proving that a different kind of healthcare was possible. I'll help, Andre said, determination hardening in his chest. We're going to fix this. As he turned to leave, he paused, glancing back at Reynolds. Whoever's behind this, they'll pay for what they've done. Reynolds' face softened, his eyes filled with concern. Andre, this isn't just about money. It's about trust. We've worked hard to build something real here. We can't let anyone destroy that. Andre met his gaze. I know, and we won't. But we need to find out who did this. Fast. As Andre left the office and stepped back into the busy clinic, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There was more at stake than he realized, and he was about to face the hardest challenge of his life. The test of faith had begun. The following days were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and sleepless nights. Andre couldn't shake the sinking feeling that Hope Care, his vision, his lifeblood, was on the verge of being shattered by a betrayal he couldn't yet comprehend. But he had no choice but to move forward. Reynolds worked tirelessly to track down the source of the discrepancies. He dug through the clinic's financial records, cross-referenced invoices, and interviewed employees. Andre was by his side every step of the way, but the mounting pressure was wearing on him. He'd sacrificed so much to get to this point, and the thought of losing it all because of one person's greed was too much to bear. The breakthrough came late one evening. "Got it," Reynolds said, his voice tight with frustration. He stood in front of the computer screen, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. The money's been funneled through a series of small accounts, all linked to one person. Andre's pulse quickened. "Who?" Reynolds hesitated before pulling up a name on the screen. "It's Dr. Jacobs." Andre blinked, momentarily stunned. "Dr. Jacobs?" The name rang a bell. He was one of the more respected physicians at Hope Care, a senior surgeon with a reputation for excellence. Andre had trusted him. Hell, they'd worked side by side to build the clinic. "No," Andre murmured. "It can't be. Not him." "I'm afraid so," Reynolds said, shaking his head. "It all traces back to him, and it's been going on for months." The betrayal cut deeper than Andre could have imagined. He felt sick to his stomach. Dr. Jacobs was a key figure at the clinic, someone patients trusted, someone who had promised to uphold the same values they'd built the clinic on. To think that he had been siphoning funds behind their backs was beyond comprehension. Andre clenched his fists. How could he? After everything we've done. After everything I've trusted him with. Reynolds placed a hand on his shoulder. "We don't know all the details yet, but we can't let this slide. Not for the sake of the clinic, and certainly not for the people who rely on us." Andre nodded, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had to confront Dr. Jacobs, but he knew that it wouldn't be easy. This wasn't just a matter of business. It was personal. The next morning, Andre called Dr. Jacobs into his office. The air between them was thick with tension, each moment feeling like a ticking clock. When Dr. Jacobs entered, he seemed as calm as ever, his face a mask of professionalism. "You wanted to see me, Dr. Montgomery?" he asked, his voice smooth. Andre nodded slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes, I did. Have a seat." Dr. Jacobs sat down, but there was a shift in his demeanor. He could sense the seriousness in Andre's tone, the change in the air. "I've reviewed the clinic's financial records, and I've found some troubling discrepancies," Andre said, his voice steady despite the anger building inside him. "Funds have been misappropriated, and everything points to you." Dr. Jacobs' eyes flickered for a moment, but then he smiled, a cold, detached smile that made Andre's blood run cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Andre said sharply, slamming a stack of papers onto the desk. "I know it's you, and I'm giving you one chance to come clean." The smile faded from Dr. Jacobs' face, replaced by a flash of something darker. He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "You think you're in control here, don't you, Andre? You think you've built something that's bigger than the system. But you're wrong. The system is bigger than you." Andre stared at him, trying to process what he was hearing. "What do you mean?" Dr. Jacobs leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You've built a nice little clinic here, but it's naive. You think you can change an entire industry by offering something better? By putting patients first? That's not how the world works. The world is built on power, and power comes from money. I did what I had to do to survive, to stay relevant." Andre's hands tightened into fists. "You betrayed everything we stand for. The people who rely on us, the ones we promised to help, you've stolen from them." Dr. Jacobs' expression darkened. "You think I'm the only one? You think I'm the only one who's been playing the game? You're in way over your head, Andre. And you've got no idea what's really at stake." Andre's heart pounded in his chest. He realized then that Dr. Jacobs wasn't just a thief, he was a part of something bigger, something more insidious. The clinic, the people who trusted him, were nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. "We'll expose you," Andre said, his voice cold with fury. "You're done here." Dr. Jacobs stood up slowly, a smile curling on his lips. "We'll see about that. You're playing a dangerous game, Andre. I don't think you understand who you're up against." Andre's breath caught in his throat. "I don't care who you think you are. You've crossed a line, and now you'll pay for it." Without another word, Dr. Jacobs turned and walked out of the room, leaving Andre standing in silence. For a moment, Andre didn't move, his mind racing. There was more to this than he realized. Dr. Jacobs wasn't working alone. He was part of a larger network, an unseen force that was bent on maintaining control over the very system Andre was trying to break. And now, Andre knew he was at war. The days following Andre's confrontation with Dr. Jacobs felt like a relentless storm. The clinic, which had once been a symbol of hope and change, was now embroiled in chaos. Andre couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every waking moment was consumed by the thought of the massive betrayal he had uncovered. Dr. Jacobs' departure had been swift, but the damage was done. Reynolds, Maya, and the rest of the staff worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation, but the scandal spread quickly. Word of the missing funds and the corruption at the heart of Hope Care made headlines, and it wasn't long before the clinic's reputation was on the line. Patients started to question the integrity of the place they had trusted. Doubt clouded their once unwavering loyalty. It was in these darkest moments that Leonard reached out to Andre, the man who had believed in him from the beginning, the one who had given him the chance to run the clinic, had been a steady force in Andre's life. But even Leonard couldn't shield him from the storm. "Can we meet?" Leonard's voice was graver than usual when he called. Andre agreed, and a few hours later, the two of them were sitting across from each other in a small, dimly lit cafe. Leonard's expression was serious, more than it ever had been during their partnership. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this, Andre," Leonard said, his voice low. "The clinic is in trouble. The press is all over us, and the financial hole is deeper than we thought. People are pulling their support, and insurance companies are backing out. I've been talking to investors. We need a large sum, and we need it fast, or we risk losing Hope Care altogether." Andre stared down at his coffee cup, his mind racing. He had known this was coming, but hearing it from Leonard made it feel real. Everything they had built, the dream, the patience, the mission, was teetering on the edge of collapse. "I don't know if we can save it, Leonard," Andre admitted quietly. "I don't know how much more I can give." Leonard placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, it's not about how much you can give, but what you're willing to sacrifice. If Hope Care falls apart, it won't just be you who loses. We all lose. But I've seen something in you, Andre. Something bigger than the clinic. You can still make this work, but you need to ask yourself, what are you willing to risk to save it?" Andre's chest tightened. This wasn't just about money or even the clinic anymore. It was about everything he had fought for. All the lives that had been touched, all the people who had trusted them. It was about more than just Hope Care. It was about a movement. A chance to show the world that healthcare could be different, that it could be human again. But the stakes were higher than ever. If he moved forward, it would be with everything on the line. If he failed, it wouldn't just be him that lost. He would be destroying the very thing that could change lives for generations to come. "I don't know if I can do this alone," Andre said, his voice trembling. "I don't know if I have what it takes." Leonard smiled, a rare moment of warmth breaking through the tension. "You're not alone, Andre. You never were. You've got a team. You've got a vision. And you've got the heart to make it happen. The question is, are you ready to step up and fight for it?" Andre took a deep breath. The weight of the decision was immense, but for the first time in days, he felt a flicker of resolve. This was his chance to prove that the dream was worth saving, that everything they had worked for could survive the storm. "I'm ready," Andre said, his voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." The next few days were a blur of action. Andre made the call to his old network, reaching out to supporters, investors, and philanthropists who had believed in his vision from the start. It wasn't easy. Many were hesitant, others unsure. But Andre was relentless. He appealed to their hearts, to the cause they had all fought for, and slowly, inch by inch, he began to rebuild the trust that had been fractured. With Leonard's help, Andre negotiated a loan from a major donor, and the financial gap began to close. The clinic would survive, but it would take time. The damage would linger, but the foundation was strong enough to weather the storm. As the dust settled, Andre stood outside the clinic once more, looking at the bustling streets, at the people walking by. Hope Care had weathered its darkest hour, but now it was stronger than ever. They had proven that the human spirit, driven by purpose, compassion, and resilience, was stronger than any obstacle. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Jacobs' actions were fully exposed, and the legal consequences were swift. But for Andre, the battle had shifted from financial survival to something far greater. It wasn't just about Hope Care anymore. It was about creating a system of care that didn't rely on corruption, that didn't thrive on greed, but instead nurtured what was truly important, the well-being of those who needed it most. With the support of his team, Maya, Reynolds, Leonard, and the entire Hope Care family, Andre moved forward with renewed purpose. He had learned what it meant to truly lead, to make sacrifices not just for himself, but for the greater good. And as he looked toward the future, he knew this was only the beginning. There was much more to be done. Many more lives to touch, many more people to heal. But this time, Andre wasn't just the doctor. He was the leader of a movement that would change the future of healthcare forever.